what spirituality is defined to me is those sets of beliefs, experiences, teachings, morals, or ethics that guide the way that you think and the actions that you take with the people around you.
Okay, and we are here. Welcome to the Millennial Experience podcast. I'm Luke Adamson.
And I'm Eddie Ambries.
What were you just about to talk about?
Yo. So I was thinking.
Your mic is pointed that way, by the way.
Oh.
There, you want it to face your face.
Check. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering where organized religion is heading in a now sort of growing number of people who are sort of just they're non-religious. You have a growing number of people like, so you and I are really familiar with Bible verses, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's a 10-year gap between me and my younger brothers who weren't as pressured to go to church because by that time my parents weren't going anymore when they were like kindergarten education time, like growing up where you start like thinking. So they weren't having to go to church at that time. So my little brothers, for example, although they disagree with the dogma and superstition of religion, are unfamiliar with some of the verses directly or how the stories go, like Moses parting the Red Sea, Jonas hiding from God, and basically origin stories or what's in Revelations. I mean, this is all familiar to us. So
they missed out on all of that.
So, I mean, you could say missed out, I guess.
I mean, yeah.
But
they're not familiar with the details of all
with
of those
the
stories.
Details. And so,
bro, because let me tell you, when I play Jeopardy, it comes in handy all the time. Like,
knowing the Bible.
If there's anything I'm grateful for that my parents were super religious, it's that I am better at Jeopardy now than most people because they have a lot of Bible related questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
So I'm wondering where organized religion is going to head when people start to not go to church as much, which is something I'm assuming will happen. Because no one's really going to pressure them unless, of course, this is the course that always takes place whenever they hit rock bottom for some reason, personal catastrophe or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, for people who would more or less feel like they themselves are pretty well off, they're doing okay, and they have friends and they they behave. How organized religion is going to try to stay updated, because I imagine, I'm going to assume in the next 50 years, anyone who's left won't be as hardcore as the most hardcore person who's alive today. Maybe. Unless you think there will be a more hardcore person because there's less people who are religious. But I'm not sure.
I wonder, it's a good question. Like, does religious extremism come out of the fear that your specific religion is starting to go away? Maybe that plays a role in it. I don't know, because
maybe, look, I would just say even from the 90s when you and I were born, already seemed like people were sort of, let's say, quote unquote, falling out of grace.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe more extremism has sort of borne out. But I mean, extremism can also be the Crusades, and that hasn't happened.
That was very extreme. That's true.
But that was basically the law too.
And that's when everybody was religious.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you had to be a Christian.
Yeah. There weren't that many atheists though. Like that wasn't an
not
option.
Not out loud, bro.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I mean, you have Eratosthenes in like 200 BC, like measuring the globe. I mean, obviously the part in the Bible where it says God shakes evil like a sheet off the earth. which is obviously implying that the earth is flat. Yeah. And since you're holding the corners, it's a square. You have Eratosthenes literally measuring the circumference of a circular earth. So yeah, I do believe there have been very unfortunately many of us in the past who just haven't been able to express themselves. Another benefit, I think, of living in the future.
What's funny? I notice a lot of religious people, they take atheism itself as the worst thing. Like,
apostasy is worse than murder, I think, biblically.
Well, no, but apostasy would also be, if you believed in Thor, you would still be an apostate for not believing in the one true God of the Bible.
I mean, but the rule is general then.
Yeah, but I'm saying people that are Christians or Muslims or Jews, Buddhists, well, I guess not Buddhists. They don't really care about anything. But
I guess they don't have a deity.
All the main deity religions, they it's like they can understand if someone believes in a different God. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, I can see how you came to that conclusion. But they can't even comprehend someone just not believing in any God. Like, it's just so bizarre to them that someone could ever think that.
Do you remember though how that felt?
What, the moment?
No, yeah. Like, do you remember how it felt in your head when you were like, okay, so other people have their own God, and I believe in this one. Like, do you remember how that felt?
It feels like you're right and everyone else is wrong. Like you
it's kind of like, yeah, it's
Answer.
okay. Like, so long as you think you're right, but I guess I know I'm right.
Yeah, but I'm actually
right. And I've been told that by the people.
I've been chosen. I've been chosen by God because I'm so special.
So I'm thinking now that you have generations who don't need that, and they're not really pursuing this feeling or in need of it, where spirituality will go when it's not in the form of, or when it's not being overtaken in the form of buildings, crosses, stars, dogma. Like how let's say maybe there's a new, like, what was that thing that happened in the past? It was called the Enlightenment. Yeah. And when they just sort of started being more free thinking for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it'll fluctuate to that again. But the thing is that the Bible it runs deep in history's roots.
Couldn't there be more reformations? Like,
I haven't seen any. They're literally just metaphorical. So, like,
let me just speak for everybody when I say, like, Islam needs a reformation. That's the difference between Christianity and Islam, is like it hasn't gotten a serious, huge reformation. Like, I think it was, what was his name? The guy that, Martin Luther, I think, was the one that kind of started the Reformation. Okay. And don't quote me on that, but which basically was the point in history when they started taking the Bible's literal, like, original translation and saying, like, whoa, what they really meant here was, you don't have to. Yeah, these were the old laws, and we don't have to follow those anymore. And they just started kind of twisting the words and making it fit a more civilized society.
I think science made Christianity do that. I don't know how important science is to those societies that are extremely, extremely religious, but science forced Christianity to make this normal, make that verse mean something, but not its literal reading of it, because that would be just absolutely insane. Witches aren't real.
Yeah.
You can't imply that they're real then.
Yeah.
And so again,
it's too late.
Science forced it to make it metaphorical. That's why there's a metaphorical reason for all of the magic stuff you can't explain, because science just cancels that out.
And back when like Constantine and all those people were just straight up changing the Bible around, just rewriting
all the edits.
Yeah, they were just editing it.
That we're not even sure which ones.
And that's why now it's a translation of a translation of a copy of a translation of a re-edit.
Because even for me, I understand the value of a text that old, although I disagree with its use throughout history. But I would still value that book if it existed without it. I probably think it was probably even more interesting if there wasn't hardcore religions forcing it down your throat. I would have been like, so there's this historical book with a lot of like things in it, and poetry and some history and
a bunch of silly
songs
stuff
and
too.
I mean, and metaphorical stories. If I'll just give them that, but I think even I, who's a non-believer, is missing out because of all of those edits from like the original mind who wrote on that papyrus or whatever it would have been. I think we're all missing out on the edits.
From an anthropological standpoint, it is kind of a shame.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say even just all humans. I mean, I would say I always thought if you were like Christian and you believed the Bible and stuff, you'd be a super fan of history, but it kind of restricts you to making sure the history you learn is aligning with the Bible's history, and you really fall into trouble there. And that was one of the things that when I left the church, and I would have said I was a good Bible student because I paid attention, read the verses, and then we practiced at home, and then we went to church and stuff, sang all the songs, and didn't even want to cuss. And I think we're like definitely missing out just on what it would have been. I mean, and I don't even think it would have survived had it stayed exactly how it was.
That's why they changed it.
I think that's why they changed
realized
it.
that.
And it makes you wonder, would society had gotten worse with it, or had people just dropped it altogether and they figured this is the only way to propitiate and control?
Society would be way different than it is now.
I wonder if they would have shedded it. I mean, haven't we shedded other gods and other even stronger, like the Greek gods?
Mm-hmm.
They were freaking legit
in
the world. Zeus was the one.
It's interesting
for a while.
that the Greeks, they probably still hold those stories very sacred in a sense of using them as metaphorical learning tools, as poetry, because there are so many good lessons in it, and from these ancient minds that were just trying to figure out the universe the best way they could. And that's what Christianity could be, is like, it could be these old texts of these ancient minds that were just trying to figure out and reason through what they were experiencing with no scientific knowledge.
I think, look, even in the time they wrote the Bible, they had their mechanical stuff and their works and stuff. If they had even included some like Newtonian engineering in there, a little bit of mathematics, like something real about biology that was always long standing, that like this verse from the Bible got it absolutely right and intentionally got it right, I would have a much different attitude about this book. But there's not a single piece of information that where in our society that you're trying to survive from sickness and trying to make sure the planet doesn't get too hot. Yeah. There doesn't seem to be anything of use or of having warned us about, like, let's say pollution. I mean, you would have had to scientifically explain it. But, I mean...
That should have been one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not cause global warming.
or like, waste. I mean, like, again, like, the first 4 are, like, I'm a jealous God. So just make sure you don't make me angry.
And that's why it's like... That's an immediate kind of, like, red flag for me, is, like... How come the first 4 of these most super important commandments out of the hundreds in that book were about, don't you dare worship any other gods. But wait, there's no other gods. But don't worship any other gods because I'm jealous.
I'm jealous.
But he, and, you know, then he goes on outside of the 10 commandments to say stuff like, don't eat shellfish and stuff like that. So he was really, really specific about all these things you couldn't do.
Things. Yeah. Don't
But
wear clothing with two different cloths.
Yeah.
Made out of two different twines.
But he couldn't tell them exactly how to make antibacterial hand soap and teach them about the germ theory of disease.
Yeah.
Tell them, I think maybe
Right.
number 1 or number 2 should have been thou shalt not rape.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would have been real easy as the creator of the universe who knows all of these things that are coming and all of these things that are right and wrong.
Like
really?
Yeah. Why
couldn't
why,
you just say thou shalt not rape?
Yeah. Why put a strict rule into some shady ass translatable, bendable?
Yeah. But make sure you don't eat
sentence.
shellfish. Don't do that.
Don't make fun of bald priests. I mean, you're right. There's so many specific things that you could have said.
And
Wash your
also,
wounds, or how to sew people up,
he also went on to say, like, you may buy your slaves from the heathen around you.
or how much to sell your daughters for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
And how women can't, teach
right,
that sort of stuff.
right.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going off on a tangent. I think.
Yeah, I think we. It still kind of goes along with it because as we're undressing all of these things about biblical terms, I mean, that's just us. This generation doesn't even know that. They just know that they disagree. And I think there's a little bit of value of knowing why you disagree. Because like I said, there's still some value in this text as a text. It just got really ruined for me because it got shoved down my throat.
That's why I think there should be a mandatory religious studies class in every high school. And it shouldn't be a specific religion. It should be like each couple weeks, each semester or whatever, they break down the various biggest religions in the world from a very objective point of view. Like, here are the good things that we've, as a society, been able to take out of these old books that people used to think were completely 100% literal. And here's all the positives we were able to get out of it. Here's the things that kind of messed things up, like because people took them literally. And here's the things that we learned a lot about. Just so that people have an objective view of like why Islamic people think the way that they do. Like the fundamentalists, why they believe the things that they do, why the Christians believe the things that they do. Just so that you can see how, because they had a huge role in shaping our planet and our society. So they shouldn't just be completely disregarded and not understood at all. I don't know. But like you said, it's good to have a reason why you're going to disagree. Why you disagree.
Yeah.
And people these days are just like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. But they don't really know why. And it's really important. Why.
And I would say, I would try to keep the Bible as text and see where spirituality moves on from here.
Let's take a quick break.
Cool.
We'll be right back. I don't know. Anyways, what were you saying?
Oh, no. I was down to speculate. If I assume that the path that brought me from religion to what my spirituality is now, and just to define, whenever I'm saying spirituality, what spirituality is defined to me is those sets of beliefs, experiences, teachings, morals, or ethics that guide the way that you think and the actions that you take with the people around you. What's led me to that spirituality? If anything, I think my religious upbringing sort of gave me a little bit more of a, because it's such a selfish sort of thing, it made me think about my own discipline about myself. But I don't know if religion was that great at teaching me empathy for people rather than just worrying about them and saving their soul. But like the real things that happen during communication where you accidentally hurt someone's feelings, like being aware of the fact that you may blurp on your words or maybe you need to be aware of like that you're in a bad mood that day. So like watch what you're saying. It's sort of like you're kind of focused on the big picture with religion, making sure that you live forever, make sure that God is favoring you.
Live forever.
Yeah, make sure that God is favoring you. But it's hard to say that I ever thought about like my really deep concern for the well-being of sort of like the people who I look at people who are dying of hunger in poor places now differently, because when you're religious, you are really counting on God to do his magic and save these people, and sort of gives you peace of mind that they're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're out of that, you're like, we need to make changes and actually talk and change things and have conversations, because we really will then let them live that kind of life until they die. And there is no heaven that they can go to. And that's what happened to me after I got out. It made me more active about what things are happening around the world, because praying and then praying for myself and just like thinking about myself, that like, you know, assuming everything is going to be okay is not, I didn't think was very productive or helpful to other people. I'm just over here thinking, well, God will make sure that they're fine. And I just make sure I'm a good person.
And the underlying concept that this life, like I think the Bible verse even says like this life is like dirty rags that will be thrown away and made clean in the afterlife.
Right.
It just kind of sets the whole tone.
It credits everything forward.
Yeah. Like nothing that happens here matters.
Exactly.
All the pain and suffering and death and torture.
Because there's going to be a heaven.
Not really that important, because this life is just like a shadow of the life to come.
There's an eternity to live after this.
So so why really spend all that much time caring about how people feel and
if this is just probation?
And it makes total sense that if you're a true believer in Christianity, your one goal should be to tell everyone you can and try to convince them that they can go to heaven too, because this life means nothing.
Exactly.
So it really sucks for everyone that knows that they're here and this is their only one life they get to live. Right. And we could all be doing so much more to make this life heaven. So I mean, for everybody.
For example, imagine that the Bible in a way implied to a mode of understanding how solar power or how wind power or hydropower may work. Implied it somewhere, anywhere. And we are talking about whatever future we think we're in, way more advanced by the time me and you were born now. Had the Bible implied wind power? Yo. We're talking about facts now. This Bible is legit. It is legit.
Or on those tablets that Moses brought down, God could have given us blueprints to make solar panels. Or
I would have said like wind power, because it would have been like practical at the time.
Yeah. Anything.
Even or hydropower too. Anything that would have used momentum. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
and the germ theory of disease a couple thousand years ago to prevent that
would have helped too. The germ theory of disease, I think, would have been the single most useful thing biblically.
Yeah, and simplest. Really easy.
I think maybe simple too, because you could just say and wash your hands.
Yeah, there's these tiny little microorganisms that are trying to kill you. The
it
reason
is not a demon.
All of your babies die in childbirth,
and the frothing,
you're not washing your hands.
Yes.
But no, screw all those babies. Apparently,
I agree that some of these facts that science told us, if God would have just implied them a little bit in the Bible, man, he'd have the lead right now.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm wondering if spirituality will move on. I'm starting to remember now why I defined the word. I think it's going to move in a way where it's not so dependent on an external source of your morals and ethics, Rather that you learn why you carry certain morals and ethics. They don't just come to you and you have a feeling of, I guess I should be nice. Oh, no, I guess I'm having a bad day. No, that you are really holding yourself to the highest possible standard of human behavior. You're on a dot and you're running out of oxygen and people are suffering. Is there really any need to be so selfish that you make it worse for more people? Absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
And we're going into climate change now. And so people are when things start getting really desperate, we're going to have to really have a lot of wisdom when all of the climate refugees start to happen, or when the coastlines start to go underwater. So you have people moving and they're having to shift around. How the economy is going to work for everybody. And these are not things that the Bible can really help us with right now. And so it's losing much of its spiritual power, because now the way you are concerned for people, you can help in a different way instead of just praying. Now money isn't sent in an envelope as cash. You can literally wire it now.
Mm-hmm.
So help can come quickly, and you can do it differently. And so
Which works a lot better than prayers.
Yeah. And so what I'm kind of thinking is that people will start being guided by the consequences of when you allow things to happen. So taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Taking action, and in some cases non-action. If when you boycott products, which can be helpful when you have a lot of people agreeing with it, with not buying it. But I think
just realizing people don't realize the impact they can have, because if you really sat down and thought about how much fresh water you use up through the products that you use, or how many child labor,
the demand you create for those things.
Yeah, like it's more than you think. So when people say, "Oh, well, if I stopped doing that, I couldn't make a difference,"
Mm-hmm.
It's if you, for instance, were to take all the trash and plastic that you use, just that you create out of a demand,
mm-hmm.
just on your own in 1 year, and just look at the pile. Yeah. It would make insane. You stop and go, wait a minute. If I changed my habits, I just even me changing would make a big difference on the planet. Just mine alone. Not to mention if you can help educate some of your friends, or mm-hmm. help, spread the word about how much change you can make.
Create demand for these biodegradable products.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that's the way people are their spirituality will be guided. What can we do to actually change it?
Yeah. And
not like, oh, God will help them.
Supply and demand is the way that we change the planet. Like, that's really mm-hmm. it, because it's so heavily driven on money. Like
the consumption really, and that's kind of a thing we're having to combat right now, is that we have a consumption economy. So there's not much stress on making a long-lasting product, is there? It's like, gotta update. And gotta make another computer.
What do you think it would look like if everything was super, super high quality and very expensive? We would probably buy a lot less things.
It makes me wonder that if like, what would you call the main internal system in the computer, that disk? The hard drive? I would assume that a hard drive isn't as material as it is. So you can update something more immaterial. And you don't have to change the whole physical system just to get a more updated thing, because, software gets updated. Well, what if software was just updated in some immaterial way in your computer? You would always keep the same thing, because you could just change that immaterial hard drive. And you wouldn't ask for more plastic again and again and again and again.
So when your computer crashes, you can just go buy a new hard drive.
I wouldn't even know if it could crash if it's a immaterial hard drive. I think it would be better.
Well, there has to be some piece
It would have to be some piece of machinery.
But maybe less reliant on that.
Less reliant on having to physically change things.
Like a cloud drive.
Possibly.
That runs your whole computer.
Yeah.
And then it's just like a simple piece that you can switch out if something goes wrong with it.
Or
Because
unless
it's all being run from the cloud.
Or
anyway.
unless because the Silicon Valley is just making better and smaller things every year, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder how important it is to keep your technology updated as far as your computers go. How important is it to actually get the next iPhone if they really are a year apart? Remember when that would happen?
Mm-hmm.
Or it was 2 years
I mean,
apart?
it's not that important. The iPhone 4 does basically everything that the new iPhone does. All it is a better camera and maybe a few apps that don't run on the old iOS.
Right.
But like the when you text someone and you can do that thing with your face where it turns it into a unicorn or something.
Okay.
Like that kind of thing doesn't work on the old iPhone 4. But like other than that, really what
calls and texts.
What can't you do on an iPhone 4 that you can do on an iPhone 11?
Right, that you're realistically needing to do in a day-to-day.
It's not really that big of a deal. But yet we've got, as a society, we're trained to want that next
Yeah, and if you can afford it,
very next year.
And if you can afford it, you will freaking get it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a fan, which is maybe a good thing about staying poor.
Yeah, poor people probably use a lot less resources than rich people.
They have to.
By far. All those private jet flights.
I mean, so I'm thinking that global warming will be a serious guider of people's spirituality because of the fact that you will have to take action to make a solution for things. Things won't be so smooth that you can really feel like your prayers are actually helping. Once they get exponentially worse, people are gonna know that's just not helping. We have to take action.
Those like pray for Puerto Rico memes and stuff, or when people post that on Facebook.
It's fine to do that too, so long as you are, figuring out a way that you really can help at least one person.
Yeah, but maybe like setting up a GoFundMe, or maybe saying, "Hey, here's how you can physically help this disaster."
Seeking out groups that are already organized a charity, at least seeking out and then donating. That will go. Yeah. That will do more help than. Yeah.
I guess the only upside to those pray for whatever
is the awareness.
Posts is the awareness.
Yeah, I agree.
But why not just post saying, "Hey, this happened.
Right.
It's crazy how this happened, and here's how you can help."
That's true. There's a way of the way that it's like it impacts you softer when it says like pray for, let's say pray for Kazakhstan. Versus a BBC Facebook report with a big fiery ass headline, Kazakhstan in ashes after this and that. And it's like, maybe just pray for Kazakhstan. Whatever's happened to them, I'm praying for them. But, like Carl Sagan said, better by far to embrace the hard truth than a reassuring fable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true that reassuring fable would be anything that you're assuming about pray for Kazakhstan. It's what you're just assuming since you're not really looking and reading at what really happened.
What do you think? I don't know if we'll have time to get too deep in this, but you know how they've done scientific studies about like the effects of prayer and how it's just precisely the same as flipping a coin. Like, it's the odds when you pray for something really, really hard. The odds of it happening are the same as flipping a coin.
Right. I imagine it's within the context of the possibility of that prayer. So how many people pray for just $20 more versus how many people pray to win the lottery?
Well, I think in the study they actually used a coin. They
saying pray
like
for it
if you pray for it to be heads or pray for it to be tails.
Oh, so it was the statistic was a regular flip coin anyway.
So if God was really listening to your prayers and would answer them, why wouldn't he? When you prayed real hard for it to be heads, why wouldn't it be heads? And I think the argument to that is probably like, oh well, God knows you're testing him.
You're not supposed to test him. Yeah, that's what I was taught.
It's like, oh God. But the same thing will work for someone that has cancer trying to pray it away, or something else. It's the same odds across the board.
Right.
It would.
I think prayer would be, I think, just the last resort, because I know, look, in my daily life, I think I have enough time. In my daily life, I do not use faith for anything. I need evidence. I don't use faith to know how much they paid me and calculate that.
It's a really unreliable.
It's very unreliable. I think the only situation I think faith is something I would have is if I was lost in the wilderness and had no apparent hope
just to keep
for
you
survival.
going.
Exactly. Because I literally have no evidence that any help is coming, and faith would literally be the hope that would be like helping me stay alive at least long enough if help was coming. But yeah.
I think so we've reached our time, but hopefully this didn't come across as too disrespectful. We respect everybody as people.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to be able to question beliefs, and you don't have to respect people's beliefs. You can, but we do respect you as a person.
And either way, I'm assuming that spirituality is the reason people have a religion. So, the conversation was just kept in the context of spirituality.
Word.
Peace, everyone.
Have a good day.